So now we're going to take a look at how the carbon cycle actually looks in an environment. So we're going to put this picture in our box at the very top. So please do your best to mimic my extremely awesome drawing here, and make sure you have a couple things that I have here. So you need an area that's some land that I've colored in green down here. You need some sort of building. You need an animal, which is obviously this giraffe right here. You'll need some trees or some plants. I have an apple tree and an orange tree. I have a human down here. I have a little pond area, and then I have some dead trees and some mushrooms over on the left there. And then, of course, at the very bottom, inside the earth, I have some fossil fuel formations. So make sure we have those things labeled and drawn to the best of your ability. Obviously, it doesn't need to be as good as this one. It's going to be tough. So just do your best in there. Doesn't need to be perfect, just needs to have all of those things in it. So pause the video right here. Make sure you've drawn those things in your box at the top of your notes, and then we'll move from there. Okay, starting with processes that go into the atmosphere. So I'm going to keep with my colors here. I'm going to use purple to show things that are going into the atmosphere, red to show things that are taking carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, and then blue is going to be our transfer of carbon from our notes. So we're going to start with our human down here. And our human, as you can see, is breathing out. That's what that gray is showing, that respiration process of breathing. So we can label this arrow respiration, because that carbon dioxide is going from the human into the atmosphere. Okay, so moving along with our into the atmosphere processes, we're going to come over to our factory over here, and you can see it's got these 3 smokestacks right here. And that is sending carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And the processes that are happening in here is they're actually burning fossil fuels. So they are burning some of these fossil fuels from down here, going into the factory. And this is the process of combustion. So combustion sends carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And remember, it's taking from those fossil fuel reserves, it's combusting those fossil fuels, and that is carbon dioxide added to the atmosphere. Okay, let's move over to the left side of our picture here. We have some dead trees over here, and one of them has actually been chopped down. So we could equate this to the deforestation happening here. But what I'm concerned about is these mushrooms on top of the tree, which are actually releasing carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And these mushrooms, these fungi, are called decomposers. So what they're doing is they're breaking down this dead tree, and they're doing that through the process of, well, decomposition. And if you remember from the notes, this sends carbon into the atmosphere, but it can also send some carbon into the soil here. So I'm going to honor that and draw those arrows in there. So the process of decomposition adds CO2 to the atmosphere. And then there's one more on here that we are going to take a look at, and that is an arrow coming from the water into the air, into the atmosphere. And if you remember, this is the process of diffusion. So this would mean that we have more carbon dioxide in the water than the air. So some of it would diffuse into the air because it's moving from that high concentration of carbon dioxide molecules to that low concentration. So that would be diffusion there. Now we're going to swap, and we're going to take a look at stuff that is going out of the atmosphere. Okay, so let's start with the big one. Carbon dioxide going from the atmosphere into the trees through the process of photosynthesis. The carbon is going out of the atmosphere and into the trees through the process of photosynthesis. Those trees are absorbing that carbon dioxide. And then let's move over back to our pond actually, because if we have a huge amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, which it looks like we do now because there's 4 arrows going into the atmosphere, well, some of that might actually go back into the pond through that same process of diffusion. So if there's more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, that means there's a higher concentration. So it's actually going to diffuse into the pond this time rather than the other way around. So those are the two processes that take carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. Now let's look at some of the transfers that can happen here. Okay, well, first of all, we can take a look at obviously our giraffe here. And apparently this giraffe likes oranges, and this orange is grown from an orange tree. So the process of carbon moving from the tree to the animal, that is the process of consumption. So consumption is that the process of eating plant to animal or animal to animal, which shows us consumption. So that carbon is moving from the orange tree into the giraffe right there. And then finally, we have one more that we need to talk about, and that is the fossil fuel formation. So we're going to take our blue arrow and we're actually going to put it down here where those plants are chilling out in that water. So those plants are alive, and then over time they die and they start to stack up. That organic matter starts to stack up, and then eventually it gets buried, and over millions and millions and millions of years and tons of heat and pressure, we can actually get fossil fuels to form from this. So I'm going to call this fossil fuel formation. And it would probably be fossil fuel formation. There we go. So we have fossil fuel formation. So now we can take a look at this entire carbon cycle. We've listed things that are adding carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. We've listed things that are taking carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. And then we've listed some transfers as well. And those transfers being consumption and fossil fuel formation.